Center and Institute review. Why are we doing this? What was the purpose?
Thank you, Vrinda, and good afternoon to all of you. Johnson, as some of you may know, has 4 centers and institutes. There's the Parker Center for Investment Research, the Center for Sustainable Global Enterprise, then the Emerging Markets Institute, and the Entrepreneurship and Innovation Institute. So these are 4 centers and institutes that Johnson has set up over the last several years. Parker Center, which Vrinda mentioned, is the oldest of our centers and institutes. The Sustainable and Global Enterprise Center was set up about 5-6 years back, and EMI and EII are the 2 newest initiatives of the school set up within the last 2 years or so. The reason why Johnson has these 4 areas is because they are considered extremely important areas for the strategic growth of the school. They are areas that our students are highly interested in, where our faculty are interested in doing research in, and our alumni are interested in. This is a way for the school to focus its energies on areas of importance, and generally these initiatives have been helpful in looking at our opportunities that our students have. So that's the introduction to these centers from my side.
Introduction to centers. Ya-Ru, introduction to China initiatives. Just as background, Ya-Ru was hired, 4 years ago? 3 years ago?
4 years ago.
4 years ago. It seems like a blur. She was actually one of the founders of the faculty founders of the Emerging Market Institute directorship, she and Andrew. And her role has evolved from that to leading all China initiatives. Ya-Ru, what's going on in the school?
Yes, it's to my current role right now. My old role was the faculty director of Emerging Market Institutes, and my dear friend, Andrew Crowley and I co-founded after a year after we both joined Johnson School, and since how many months ago? Soumitra? It was like 1.5 years ago, and then we decided as a school, and thanks to Soumitra's push, that we should focus more on China. So there are 5 objectives for this initiative. Number 1, is the first. If we all agree that China is an important economy that we cannot ignore. And if so, how a business school like us, right, should play a role in that changing world market. And there are 5 objectives we hope to accomplish with our China initiatives. The first one is to continue to be recognized as a globally premier business school. And with serious about the China market. Right, we are a premier business school serious about the China market. That's the first one, and the second is to support faculty research in and on China, and the third one is to support our alumni relations and activities in China, and the fourth one is to train our students from China, in China, and elsewhere with the China expertise to be global leaders in the coming years. And finally, we're also hoping to leverage China market as a way to actually expand our programming and research to build links with other emerging markets around the world. So these are the 5 objectives that we have for these China initiatives. And later I'll report back to you about some initiatives that we have started and feel fairly proud of in a little bit.
Doug?
So I want to start by saying thank you. I do this each talk I give now because I truly believe without the trustees, alumni, particularly those in New York, it would be Stanford Tech I'd be talking about, not Cornell Tech. And it's just an amazing opportunity that we have at Cornell Tech. to really do something new and different in New York for Cornell and in the space that we're operating in. We have, certainly our ambitions are around Johnson and New York City, which are much broader than Cornell Tech. And within Cornell Tech, if you know much about it, the vision is very multidisciplinary. It's not just between the technical fields, but between the technical fields and business. It's going to be one integrated multidisciplinary campus, but what I want to emphasize today is we're launching a new MBA program. So we're very much a partner within Cornell Tech. I can talk about all those different aspects, be happy to at length. But we're really trying to do something new and reimagine the MBA. And some people say there's things that come along once in a lifetime. The ability in academia to do something truly new and different in new different ways more than once in a lifetime. Most lifetimes don't get that. So I say thank you personally for the opportunity that I have to do that kind of thing. And we're really trying to say we have a different kind of MBA program, an MBA for the digital economy, that's really a reimagining of the MBA to be appropriate for the 21st century and the digital age, as opposed to a different kind of program within which MBA programs have grown up with.
So Doug, as you have the mic, please continue, and can you tell us what is going well with the initiative? Right? So what are some things that we should be happy to hear about? And then I'll ask you what's worrying you afterwards.
It's how many hours is this session? I think what's going well is we built a vision. We built a vision that fits very well within the Cornell Tech vision. It started with going out to companies and finding out what the need was out there that wasn't being fulfilled by business schools and wasn't being fulfilled by other channels for talent and training for companies. And I would argue, when we say it's a digital economy, this is not a tech MBA. I'd argue every business is or will be a tech business fairly shortly, if not already. And so we built something around that we're getting tremendous response to. From the press, when we first introduced it July 22nd, in the first week we had over 1 billion impressions. I think it's the first time the word billion has been used with a Johnson school, possibly. I'd like to say it's our endowment, but I can't.
Nice
so
pitch.
It's been,
nice pitch.
That was supposed to be subtle, but
yes.
I guess it but it really is the response from prospective students, from prospective faculty, from the press, from alumni, from industry has just been tremendous. So I think we have a vision that fits very well within the tech campus, is truly new and different, and is being received very well. And that's just fantastic.
Ya-Ru, what do you see as the connection between China and New York City Tech? So can you link up to what Doug spoke about?
Oh yeah, actually there are few huge initiatives that the Chinese government has been pushing in the recent years and definitely in the coming years. That is innovation. So so one of the things we will be doing in China, and hopefully starting next year, is to launch a couple of forums on innovation in China. And I think the goal is we're hoping that we can actually influence the way the government set up the policies. So at the societal level, we're hoping that we can actually influence how the government can actually set up policies to encourage innovation at the societal level. And of course, we are also hoping that we can actually bring insights to the business leaders and companies about how firms can innovate at their firm level. And of course, there's always demand for leadership training about how they themselves can actually bring innovation to their firms. And I have received several requests for a program like that, actually on our campus, on the New York Tech campus. So there will be a couple of them happening next year. And what we're hoping is that we would also be able to bring some of the resources that we have and leverage the knowledge that we have and actually deliver it in China. So that's one thing that should be happening this coming year in 2014.
So now can you tell the audience how you're thinking of what's going well with our China initiative? So the highlights.
There are two highlights. I think is a fairly visible highlights. One is that when I first joined Johnson in 2009, and then when I joined Johnson, we only have one non-certificate program on campus, which was the Nanjing non-certificate, the Cornell Nanjing certificate program. And since then, we have grown from one of such program to 4 right now on our campus. And next year, we're going to add another 3. So we'll have 7 programs being held right here on our Ithaca campus.
Ya-Ru, just to clarify, these are 7 different universities from China that are inbound?
Yes, these are from 7 different schools, and essentially all the top schools from China. And this set include the Guanghua School of Management of Peking University, and then the second, that will be a new one next year, is the People's Bank of China School of Finance from Tsinghua University. And then the third is the Chong Kong Graduate School of Business. If you ever heard of Li Kai-shing, which is one of the most known entrepreneurs in Asia, he founded Chong Kong Graduate School of Business. And the fourth one is the China Euro International Business School. They also send their outbound executive MBA group here. And then and Nanjing, and then these are, so the 7 programs are mainly from these 5 different schools.
So you said there were 2 highlights of China initiatives. This was one, which is the inbound executive ed, and the other?
Yeah, so this one is actually a way for us to actually create influence right here on our campus. And the other one is actually, this is actually a major move, in my view, for any business schools, in the U.S., which is to actually deliver a degree program in China. So if everything goes well, we are actually going through the approval process right now, but we have obtained a unanimous vote from our faculty back in early September, actually September 6th. So we received unanimous votes to launch a dual degree program together with a partner school in China. So this, to me, is transformational. It's a huge change, internally, and I think externally as well. This is definitely going to catch lots of attention in the media globally.
So Vishal, now you have to follow these 2 amazing people, and pressure, and tell the audience what is going on as we're looking at centers. What are some positive developments in how, what the centers have done and going forward?
Thanks, Brinda. So to start with, let me first say why we have centers or how they are useful for the school. So generally in a business school, faculty do their own research and offer courses to students. Centers serve a lot of important roles for the school. Centers allow the faculty to conduct research in a focused area by providing resources relevant to that particular area. They allow students the ability to take a set of courses in a specific area, develop expertise. So that's from the students' programming or teaching perspective. And secondly, centers allow students to interface with companies, take hands-on projects in companies, to do visits to various companies and countries. So they provide a kind of hands-on experience that considerably enriches the learning experience for students. And thirdly, centers provide a way for our alumni to engage with the school in areas that are of specific interest to them. So centers serve an important role for the school with respect to faculty, students, as well as alumni in areas that are of perceived importance or specific importance to the school. So these C&Is have a really important role for the school. They enhance our reputation. They allow us to admit higher quality students who are interested in those specific areas. They improve the recruitment of our students. So for this reason, it becomes important for the school to highlight specific areas where we want to develop a competitive edge and compete with our peer schools. Another aspect of centers is that Johnson is a selective and high quality small school. So when we compete with our larger peers, centers give us the ability to have economies of scale in very quickly with low investment in very targeted areas. So they improve the competitive ability of the school with respect to those particular areas. So this is a general strategy of having centers and institutes as a way of innovating for the school. Now specifically, I think the second part of your question was what's happening or what's going well. What we have been finding is that there is a huge interest in our student body and among faculty to engage in emerging markets, in entrepreneurship and innovation, in sustainable global enterprise, and in investment research. So to give you some examples, as many of you probably know, the Parker Center administers Cayuga Fund, in which our students make investment decisions, getting hands-on experience, applying their classroom concepts to actually running a portfolio. The Parker Center also manages or organizes a lot of competitions for undergraduates and MBA students, which are global in nature and in stock picking. So students not only in Johnson but also at Cornell broadly get exposure into stock markets. So then if I go to sustainable global enterprise, this center provides a lot of projects to our students in companies that are interested in SGE and provide a lot of exposure to our students in these specific areas. If I go to Emerging Markets Institute, they have been organizing a lot of field trips for our students to countries like India, China, Brazil, Colombia, Israel, and giving them exposure into management practices in these countries. And many of our students end up taking internships in these countries or taking their final placements in these countries. The Entrepreneurship Institute similarly is extremely active. They have 13 courses that are taken by about 500 students across the entire campus, and they provide a lot of hands-on support to students who want to become entrepreneurs, and so they have entrepreneurs in residence who help work with these students to create their enterprises. So there's a lot that is going well with these C&Is, and although some of them are pretty young, the proof of concept is extremely strong, and we are trying to develop it further at this time.
So what lies ahead now to the reverse order, which is for centers and institutes, what are areas of growth, areas of improvement going forward? How should they link with the other initiatives? If you had your wish list for centers and institutes, what would you ask for?
So our C&Is have many opportunities. One opportunity comes up because of the China initiatives of the school and the NYC Tech campus, because so far we have been focused in Ithaca, and in Ithaca it is relatively easier to serve the needs of a diverse student population through traditional teaching and research. But when we have a diverse set of offerings that are globally distributed, then having centers helps us provide more opportunity for our students that are located far away. So these C&Is should be able to help the school provide more value to our students who are in China or in the NYC Tech campus. I think that's one huge opportunity that the school has through centers and institutes. Now, one challenge for them going forward is growing resources, both financially and in terms of people. And growing resources is a chicken and egg problem, because you want to have enough outputs to attract resources, and then you need the resources to create outputs. So our centers and institutes are working on this, but this is a really important issue for them, and these are areas of great importance for the school to work with them. A third thing, if I may mention, is that in the proof of concept that we have seen so far for these C&Is, their teaching activities are amazing, and they have developed them in different degrees. So some have field studies, some have more coursework or hands-on learning for students, some have more support for PhD students and research. Now there is a need for cross-learning, so that if one center institute is doing something well, another is doing something else well, they can learn from each other and develop a more balanced profile. Because ultimately we want the C&Is to be able to serve the research needs of the school, the teaching needs of the school, as well as the outreach needs of the school. So these are the three areas that I see as important for them.
So Ya-Ru, what keeps you up at night as you're thinking of China initiatives?
Right now is how to get that approval done.
What do you control that keeps you
I have
up
no
at night?
control over that, because right now 2 lawyers are talking. This is all the details, right? That doesn't involve academic knowledge, but legal language. That's an immediate challenge. But the other challenge that I see is that although it's actually quite exciting to be able to actually launch dual degree program and actually grant degree in China, which I think is going to be highly welcomed by the market. And it certainly sent a very strong signal to the market about how serious we are about that market. So I think that will help us a lot in terms of legitimacy building, right, and to do more things, right, to have more engagement down the road. This is definitely a very strong foundation that we're laying out right now, for other things we can continue to push. But then at the same time, I think it would not be easy to actually execute it, to carry it out, right? Now assuming the approval would actually go well and then it would be launched, but then to actually deliver a program in China, it would be challenging. I mean, operationally, and also for our colleagues as well, because at the end of the day we still need to maintain our academic rigor, right? And we want to ensure that the students that we would grant the degree to would also would meet our standards back here in Ithaca. So, and to actually do that well, it's going to require lots of work and effort. So this is something that that sometimes give me headache, but at the same time it's exciting, right? So instead of teaching organizational behavior in the classroom, I'm actually doing it these days. So that's one. I do think there's a lot of learning going on. When I first joined Johnson, teaching China executives seemed to be a very novel concept for many of my colleagues. But after many of my colleagues start to teach these highly senior executives, the non-degree programs that I talked about earlier actually has all the CEOs and the general managers coming into this program. So these are not middle level managers, but actually the C-level executives, and many of them are they're the owners of their companies. And they come here, and then and our colleagues interact with them, and hopefully they gain some knowledge from these interactions as well, and which that they can feed back to the classroom in our full-time MBA program. But I think it seems to be easier now. The teaching Chinese executive doesn't seem to be such a novel concept few years later. I think, in terms of the, setting up the support structure to support this initiative for this dual degree program in China, we are probably in the best position that I could ask for. But still, there'll be challenges ahead because it will be in a different market. Even how do we admit students? How we make sure the students that we admit will indeed meet our academic criteria. Right? Who will be doing that screening? Right? These are all the details in the execution that will be very interesting.
So Ya-Ru, you said something very interesting, and I'm going to link it back to what you said, Vishal. Do you see China as proof of concept? So what we learn from this, we then can roll out to other markets in other ways as we engage across the world? I'm not asking you to commit to doing 15 countries, but...
Well, what I'm hoping is that if the world actually sees China as an important an important market, then not just people in the U.S. will be interested in China, right? But people in India, people in Brazil, right, might also be interested in China. So this concept, calls BRICS on BRICS, right? BRICS are interested in other BRICS countries, and actually one of the things we will be doing, in the non-degree certificate program next year, is to actually bring. And that would, Lourdes, I would need your help with that, is to actually, hopefully, we can bring the executive from Brazil and the senior executive in the energy sector from China and have them have a dialogue on sustainability issue. The program is going to be sustainability. And the Chinese executive actually asked for a forum. They're hoping to have a dialogue with people here in the U.S. and since it's a sustainability program, they're hoping that they can interact with executive from Brazil as well. So we're hoping that and this will bring in the help from our centers. So sustainability center, emerging market center, right, would also be involved. So this is and this will be done in New York Tech. So hoping to bring all these resources together.
Doug, you said you needed a few hours to talk about what keeps you up at night. You have 5 minutes.
Well, now I just got a new one. I have to host a Chinese program.
That's right.
Yes, you have to host this as well.
And Lourdes has to teach us, so...
You have all the teaching figured out right here. These two amazing women.
So maybe I'll talk about 2 things. One echoes what Ya-Ru talked about, that's executing. It's unusual in academic environment. We move a little bit slowly, partially because we have a totally infinite time horizon in our thinking. But we're going to have a program that starts in May. We're not sure what the space is. We don't know who the faculty are. We don't have any students. We don't have any staff. And we're going to start in May. Some of you might live like that, but we're not used to doing that in academia. But we can't do something that tech does, which is fast failure, because we can't fail the first students. Right in May, this has to be something that's totally excellent, that everybody around the world in the business community and the business academia is going to look at and say what Cornell is doing is something special. So how do you do that between now and May? So that keeps me up a lot at night. The second one, which is a real challenge, but I think a very important one for all of Cornell Tech, not just us, is how do we use Cornell Tech to make Ithaca stronger? There's a big worry that Cornell Tech will take away from Ithaca, and our argument is Cornell Tech does not take away from Ithaca, Cornell Tech adds to Ithaca. And how do we do that? How do we make sure the things we're doing in New York are contributing positively to what's happening in Ithaca? How do we bring students from New York back down to Cornell Tech? How do we take programs in New York back up here, either virtually or in person, and those kind of things? And that's something that we're really working on, but it's not always obvious. So it's one of our challenges.
So actually, before I turn it over to the audience, is Soumitra still here? He's left. Okay, so...
now we can really talk. Okay, you got the pitch now.
Exactly.
Darn Dean.
Notice you're on our side. All right. So how does it feel to be in the school these days, right? So as you can sense, lots of activities, lots of initiatives. So tell me overall sense of the school, one amazing thing and one thing that gets you anxious about what's going on in school.
I'll tell you just the one thing that I believe is really true. This is the best chance we've had. I've been here 23 years for Cornell to substantially change its position within the business school market in a very real way to another level. We're a really good school. As I say, we're one of the 15 top 10 schools. And we're a quantitative program. But this is a very ambitious dean who's changed the tenor of the school. There's absolutely no doubt about that. And changed the ambitions. And we have a chance, if we do it right, and we do the right things correctly, to change the school. And that is extremely exciting and innovating and totally exhausting for everybody.
We all agree.
Yes, absolutely. And I think for that reason, I'm also trying to find a way to capitalize on the resources that we would be pouring into the Cornell Tech, into some other initiatives that we have, like China Initiative, right? So what I'm hoping is that the programs that we'll be doing, even the research we'll be doing, right, would also to actually, to the China Initiative can also be integrated with the resources we're going to pull into the technology campus. And perhaps, given that we actually have colleagues, who are experts, not from business school, but from engineering, from technology schools, right? These might also be the colleagues that we can consult with, as we push the China Initiative. Especially if I'm going to run a forum, right? And that actually will speak to the policy makers in China. I would love to have colleagues from those areas to come and participate as well.
So Vishal, what does it feel like to be in the school these days? What's energizing and what's scary?
So from my perspective, I think I face a problem of plenty at this time. There's a large number of exciting things happening. We are growing, adding new faculty, introducing new programs, introducing new elective courses for our students, and all these initiatives through which we are innovating education. And for me, it is, I think every day about balancing between my research, my teaching, and all these various activities. So that's the fun part of what's happening here.
Very well said. Very nicely, diplomatically and direct.
It's balancing. I'm thinking every moment is a trade-off. Maybe balancing over time.
Yeah. We'll open it up to the audience for questions. How should we do this? Should I take the mic? Is that the protocol? I can do it.
We're loud. We don't allow.
You're loud? Okay, good.
Okay, go ahead.
So question on intellectual property. In China, what's the latest? Can intellectual property be protected? And then maybe the flip side, Doug, you mentioned the digital economy. Does intellectual property even matter in digital economy?
Yeah, that's this is actually something that I personally have explicitly discussed with the partner school. And in fact, initially we were thinking there are 4 possible schools on the table that we were considering. And these were all top schools, the best schools that anyone can find in China. This is one of the factors in that selection, right? It's like who would be more likely or less likely to do so, right? And after that, I personally had a discussion with the dean about this, even before we started a formal negotiation, because I said this is a concern, right? And this is an issue that has been raised at other schools in the U.S. When this other school was thinking about launching a degree program, right? So I said this is a concern that I think I'd like you to be made aware of, right? And then let's find a way So this is one of the things that I would need to design. We need to come up with a mechanism, right? It's not just trusting that people will have the moral integrity, not to engage in activity like this, and in fact to come up with some mechanism, right, to prevent this from happening. So this is one of the important matters that we consider when we chose the partner.
Yeah, it's also the case that Cornell has an interaction with Tsinghua outside of Johnson School's interaction with People's Bank of China School of Finance.
Yeah, that's actually one. I have not mentioned who our counterpart is. She just revealed it.
You guys didn't vote on it.
So it is it will be the People's Bank of China School of Finance at Tsinghua University. That's our counterpart. And we actually, Cornell as a university has many layers of relationship and connections with Tsinghua, which is very good, in my view. Because in China, the best way, I always believe the best control mechanism in China is not just legal. It's not the legal binding mechanisms, but instead it's the social network, right? Because if one upset the other, but that one might be able to afford, but if one upset the entire network, right, and that would be very extremely costly. And given that we actually have many connections with other schools within Tsinghua, I think that would make things like this and other matters less likely to happen, or we would in a much better position to manage them.
Well, I guess I have the mic, so. This is for Doug. Could you talk a little bit more about how the MBA program in New York is going to be differentiated and unique from other top MBA programs? You mentioned you have a kind of a clean slate opportunity to start over with it. And what's going to make it unique and differentiated and different from the experience students have at other top MBA schools?
Well, the first is every MBA school, top MBA school you can think of in the world, is not only in a business school, it's in a separate physical business school building. And when they talk about teams, they talk about putting marketing people with finance people, with operations people, with consultants. We're going to be an MBA program on a tech campus. That's extremely different. When we talk about integration, we talk about a business student with a computer science student with an EE student. That is one, very significant difference of what we mean by the learning environment and the culture. You can say that, but until you go down to the Google building and experience what it's like to be sitting in that environment, it's hard to really, live it. A huge difference. Another is we're totally changing the curriculum. There'll be no such thing as a semester-long class, no such thing as a class that goes Monday, Wednesday from 10 to 11:15. Instead, everything is modularized into focused content followed by business application of that content in an integrated way. And we have 4 different modules. The first is what we call Project Ready, the business fundamentals of the digital economy in an integrated way. Then you go down to New York. We call Big Tech, how do larger, more existing organizations adapt to innovation, use technology, bring it into their organizations. Then Global, go to Israel, work with the Technion and those students, and see what the applications are like outside of the United States. And finally, what we call Startup Ready, a totally integrated semester where you're doing a startup. And so it's not just the courses, because you could look at the course list that we have, and you could go to Stanford or MIT or Carnegie and you'd see all those courses, but you wouldn't see that curriculum. And even if they had that curriculum in a business school, you couldn't have that environment. I'll give you just one example. We have 3 deposits so far, and one of the students is he's an orthopedic surgeon who'll be resident next year at the Hospital for Special Surgery, working with one of the computer science faculty on digital information within prosthetic devices to have real-time understanding of the performance of prosthetic devices. That doesn't happen in a normal business school because there isn't a business school student sitting next to a computer science professor in one space where there's that interaction going on all the time. So I think it's fundamentally different in its culture and the curriculum are the two biggest ways.
Okay, so for those of us on council who are in the business world and who do business in China, but also technology, are there things that we can be doing to help your initiatives? I mean, do you look for partnerships or things from the business world?
Thank you. We give you the $20 later on.
Yeah, I actually, I always hope that that what we do in China would also help our communities here, and communities mean especially our business communities, our alumni, in whatever they are doing, and vice versa, right? All these groups, when they come to Ithaca, I always bring them to Corning. So they go up to Corning, and Corning has been hosting these groups for the past 4 years. Every single year, they would host about three groups each year, and I will bring them to S&P as well in New York City, and S&P has been putting out amazing group of senior executives to talk to these senior guys from China. And the nicest thing that I heard is that these are exactly the group we are trying to get access to in China. Right, S&P would spend so much money to actually get access to this particular group, and here we are, bringing them to their headquarters, right, and for them to introduce the, how ratings work. So I think, for that kind of alliance, I think this is the best, right? Because these guys coming to the U.S., they want to learn how things operate. How amazing firm like Corning, is able to sustain its innovative spirits, over the 150 years, right? And they like to learn that. And at the same time, we also help strengthen the business relationship between Corning and many of the senior guys from China. So this, so if your company is doing business in China or have a greater interest in China, please let me know, because I'm looking for more company options in Ithaca and in New York, for these the growing group that we will have in the coming years. So that would be extremely helpful. Thank you.
Vishal.
Can I add? So, and I think I also want to add from the centers and institutes point of view, at a general level, many of our alumni work with different centers and institutes in organizing field trips for our students, in providing in serving as hosts for projects done by our students, in providing data for research, so there are many ways in which, and sometimes just supporting them financially. So there are many ways in which the alumni and the local community are involved in the centers and institutes. And just recently we had a manufacturing forum where Corning participated, and many other senior alumni from manufacturing industries participated, and China was discussed. So, yep.
This person.
Yes, this is supposed to be a business innovation, which you would call intellectual capital, which you would call an intangible asset. I want to know how Johnson School recommends we measure business innovation.
You mean our own, or more broadly?
Well, I think the Johnson School, before the 10 best 15 schools or other, should be able to help us measure innovation.
That's our Dean's Index.
That's our Dean's Index, the Global Innovation Index.
By company, not by country.
By company.
By company. That's actually a really interesting question, because that I've been asked that question as well. In our China strategy report, here's one idea that we proposed, or the committee members proposed, is to not exactly company. It's actually measure is to rank all the provinces in China with the index that Cornell comes up with. Because and then rank the different provinces and publicize that every year. If we run a forum, publicize it every year, that definitely is going to influence how each province, right, set up their systems, right, to encourage innovation. So then that would catch lots of attention. And I joke about this with Soumitra. I said, we'll have lots of party secretaries coming to visit us.
I'd like to answer that too. So the person who should have been here, he's not here, who would have given, I think, a very detailed answer is Wes Sine. He's a professor of entrepreneurship and innovation. If I can get your name, I'll get you in touch with him, and he'll give you an excellent answer.
That's what he does.
I'd like to talk to you after this thing is over. I can get your name. Doug, am I missing something in the answer?
No, it's good. We focused a lot on what our measures of success are, but we haven't thought too much. And a measure of success is, are we in fact doing and known for being innovative?
I'm aware that the ILR school dean and the law school dean both returned last week from trips to China pursuing the interests of their respective schools, and I assume that other units of Cornell University have traveled to China and continue to do so. Is there any planned effort to integrate your interests in China with those of the other schools? And if you could say a few words about how they could intersect, I'd be very interested.
Here's one idea. I think I've said this ever since I joined Cornell, and now it's such a pleasure to try to make that pitch to you all here. I think at the university level, one thing I would highly encourage our university level leaders to consider is to actually set up a facility. To set up a facility in China that can help integrate lots of things across schools in China. Our dean has asked me if it makes sense for us to actually set up a facility. In other words, set up an office or building in China. Personally, I think it makes so much more sense if it is done at the university level as opposed to at the school level. Because at school level, we are not big enough, right? And for school and for society like China, if we are going to set up anything, it has to be highly presentable. Right, just like McKinsey, when McKinsey first went to China, they actually all their recruitings were done in the presidential suite in a 5-star hotel. Right, it's because that is we are Cornell going to China, and that facility would have to be presentable. Many of our peer schools like Wharton, Stanford, they got a building there, right? And I don't think it would make sense, or even have a floor, right, in Shanghai or in Beijing. Harvard's research center is, occupies one floor in probably the most known area in Shanghai. I don't think it would make sense for us to have that, but I think it makes perfect sense at the university level to set up something like that. That then can help integrate lots of things that we do across schools within Cornell.
Excuse me.
Is someone there? Bill?
Yeah, I have a question. I'm a little bewildered by this whole Chinese venture. And there are a number of questions that run through my mind, but basically it's this. The model of American business school education is predicated on a free market system. I'm wondering to what extent the Chinese government will be hospitable to that model of business education.
Actually, all the knowledge that people are learning right now at business school in China, it's all imported from here. It's all coming from here.
That's not answering my question.
I mean, the government?
Are you concerned that there'll be...
What's going to happen is going to be determined by the Chinese government. That's what's going to happen. So if they don't like the model that is being presented, you can assume they will do something about it. And the question I have is, do you know to what extent the Chinese government will be sympathetic to a free market system?
But I think it's already accepted it.
No, there's no evidence that they are one way or the other.
Academic freedom, I think.
Do you know, or don't you know?
I do know, because I teach there.
Tell me what you know.
And including the government officials in the classroom, they are using our knowledge, at least the knowledge that we teach, we deliver here in our business school, right there, in their own institutions, even government institutions.
I think, you're asking a broader question, I think, about academic freedom. If I can broaden the scope of the question, which is, what safeguards are there for academic freedom, for our scholars? And I think we've had those conversations, and there's evidence, as Ya-Ru is saying, right? So we've had faculty go and teach there. We have a faculty member who's resident there. He's a full-time faculty member. So far, we've not had any evidence that has us concerned.
Can I add? So I think one more thing is that there is a need from our students to be aware of China and to have experience in working with Chinese companies. Likewise, there's a need from Chinese students and managers to work with our companies or our students here. So maybe, as Vrinda said, it's a broad question, but there is an unfulfilled need.
And I think that probably here's one the most direct evidence, right, for Chinese government to actually endorse the knowledge from the West or the U.S. is this internalization push. Of universities in China right now. And you probably heard of this. Stephen Schwarzman gave Tsinghua $300 million back in May. Stephen Schwarzman, one of the billionaires on Wall Street gave $300 million to Tsinghua, and that's it, and the reason is exactly because he shows his support for this internalization push that the Chinese government has been doing or trying to do in the past few years. And this grant is for for American students, right, to go to China to learn and get degrees. So that $300,000 would be used as funds and scholarship for that, right? And so I think that this is the most direct evidence that that Chinese government not only accept the knowledge from the U.S., but also it actually strongly embraces it.
Do we have time for one more question? If you haven't had any questions from this side of the room, this is the professor and me wants to balance out. I guess nobody here wants to talk, so it's you.
If I could bring together a few of the last questions and responses.
Yeah.
The heads of the Chinese government several years ago noted their extreme desire to bring innovation to China. I think our own examples here, though, show that in our history, that kind of innovation you can't limit it to just technology or business. It's throughout. I mean, our great university is an example of that. It's free thought, academic freedom and such.
Right.
Has the Chinese government figured out how they can, as related to the last question?
Right.
Deng Xiaoping brought capitalization, capital economy to China decades ago. I think there's been a major commitment in China. Will they be able to restrict innovation to those specific target areas of business, technology, without the risk to their own government of free thought in the individuals who bring that innovation, also then has potentially question their own form of totalitarian government. I mean, we've seen that here, after all, in our own extremes of liberal and conservative political thought, trying to rein in free thinking and thought. Are innovation and free political thought at all compatible? And in the nature of our institutes and the great initiatives of working together in New York, have you thought of bringing the great scholars we have in Cornell in political and government thinking into your partnership to answer this even broader question?
This is, I'm going to jump in here. So I know that one of the pushes for centers and institutes, the ideas that have come up from the center directors, has been how to engage the larger Cornell community. Because there's a vast richness of thinking on this campus. And centers, while they're currently housed in our school, we can still lead the effort, but there's lots of connections to be made. And the first half of your question is certainly above my pay grade. So I don't know if any one of my colleagues wants to address that, which is what will be the impact of, I think, liberation of businesses on liberation of thought. I can't speculate on that.
Another hour.
Oh, yep. Well, the hour's up. We lead another hour. All right. Thank you all very much. I would like to anybody who has, wants to help with these initiatives, please come and talk to us. Yes.